So why does your coffee taste bad? So there can be a number of reasons. Today we're going to discuss 4 specific variables to improve your coffee. Whether you are a home brewer or professional brewer, we want to increase and improve your coffee consistently every single time. So around the world, filter coffee is a massive thing. Whether you are working in a shop, whether you are brewing at home, it is huge, and people speak about flavor notes all the time. Maybe this is weird to you. Take it small steps at a time. So about 5 years ago, I started brewing coffee at home, and I really enjoyed brewing coffee for myself, my family, and my friends. But I quickly realized that the variables play a massive role in your end product. And today I want to help you increase and improve the quality of your coffee at home by looking at only 4 T's, 4 essentials. The first one, grind texture. Secondly, water temperature. Thirdly, turbulence. And lastly, the brew cycle time. These, when you follow them correctly, should give you handles and tools to make sure that your coffee tastes consistently great at home. Let's look at the first T, the grind texture. So today I'll be using a hand grinder because that's what I use at home. Maybe you like to travel. Hand grinders are great, and they have quality hand grinders out there today. This is definitely one of them. So with grind texture, you can adjust your grind size, and regardless of the grinder that you have, the smaller the number, the finer the grind, the bigger the number, the coarser the grind. So like with anything, 3 glasses with rocks, sand and clay, if I were to pour water over each one of them, the one with the rocks would run much faster, the one with the clay will run the slowest, and this has got to do with the space between each particle. Same thing with grind texture. If you want your brew to be a bit more intense, you want to open up more surface area of the coffee bean to the water. So coffee bean is quite big, but we want to break this down to make sure that the water can get into the coffee molecules and extract flavor. To have this transaction take place, the water get into the coffee and extract flavor into our cup. The second one, water temperature. With water temperature, ideally with the SCA, you want your water temperature to be between 92 to 96 degrees. Anything below this, you might find is a bit underwhelming, maybe not sweet enough, maybe not crisp in acidity. Or on the other hand, if your water temperature is too high, 98, 99 degrees, you might shock the coffee and will end up with something that's overtly bitter, and that's never a pleasant thing. And the third one, turbulence. We'll look at ways in which we can either stir or swirl our coffee to increase extraction, to enhance the extraction, to make sure that we extract enough of the coffee bean into our cup. And lastly, a brew cycle. Do you like your brews to be short? Do you like your brews to be long? Shorter brews might end up most of the time being underwhelming, and longer brews astringent, intense, and dry in the finish. We want to get a brew time that helps us and results in a cup that is sweet, complex, with enough body and a crisp acidity. Let's get brewing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I will put the coffee beans into my grinder, and I'll take you through the process. So I'm going to preheat my water to 94 degrees, and I'll be using 18 grams of coffee. So SCA recommends a brew ratio of 60 grams per liter. So using that recipe, today I'm going to follow that, 18 grams of coffee and a total amount of water of 288 grams. My grind size is a medium to slightly coarser grind. So on the Comandante, it is 22 clicks. If you've got one at home, you can use that to use this recipe. Let's get grinding. Right, so this is a medium to slightly coarse grind. On the Comandante, it was grounded on 22 clicks. If you've got a Comandante, you can grind it on that setting and follow this recipe. After that, we're going to use a paper filter today, and I'll be folding it along the seam, and we'll be rinsing out this filter with hot water. The reason for this is we want to make sure that the that the pigments within the filter, called lignin, gets washed out. This has got like a woody, almost like cardboard taste. We don't want that in your coffee. The second reason why you'd want to rinse your filter is to seal the filter to the brewer, and at the same time heat up your server and the brewer. Otherwise, the water temperature that we've worked so hard on will just get sucked into the brewer and to the server, and you will end up with a cup that is not as delicious as it can be. Just give that a good swirl and discard. Next step, I'll add the coffee, freshly ground, to my pre-wet filter, 18 grams. And the next step, you'd want to just distribute the coffee, not to leave it on this small mountain, but give it a small tap on the side to create that even flat bed. Tear your scale, and the first step is I want to add some water to saturate all the coffee. The reason for this, and this is very important, is to make sure that the CO2 that's trapped inside this coffee from roasting, we want to make sure that it gets released from the coffee. Now this is important, otherwise the CO2 will try to get out, water will try to get in, and there's a mismatch, action-reaction, and water just runs past the coffee and doesn't get into the coffee and extract the flavors that we so dearly want in the cup. So first thing, start your timer and start pouring. A slow, gentle pour from the inside out. Try not to hit that filter. Now, I poured quite a generous first pour, like the blooming pour. So up to 75 grams and leaving this for 30 seconds. So from 45 seconds, I'll start pouring and I will pour until 180 grams. Now you'll see that my coffee stops blooming, stops bubbling, and this is an indication that the coffee is saturated and relatively well degassed. So gently pouring from the outside in. Keeping my water at a consistent temperature of 94 degrees and leaving this for another 15 seconds. So at this time, you don't want to wait too long, otherwise you'll have a lot of coffee grounds sitting high and dry on your filter, which means that they are not extracted. If it's not in contact with water, it means no extraction, which ends up with us extracting only, for example, 17 grams of coffee instead of the full 18 grams. And there we go. That's our last pour. We'll give it 10 seconds and give it a gentle swirl. And this is our turbulence. So you'll see I'm not knocking, I'm only swirling 3 times. And this will just make sure that it creates a slurry with which the coffee will move down, settle in an even bed to make sure that the coffee is evenly extracted. So I have used my grind size, a medium to slightly coarse grind size. I've now used a water temperature of 94 degrees. I've used turbulence just to settle that and create an even extraction. And now I want to see how these come together with the total brew time. And we're aiming for in the area of 3 minutes for this dosage and for this brew size. Another thing to consider aside from the 40s is taste. So if your brew tastes very intense, bitter, dry and astringent, your grind size is probably too fine. But we will also see this in our brewing time. Something that's very long and just doesn't run with an even stream, but starts dripping very soon in your brew. Also, on the other end of the scale, if your brew is very underwhelming, weak, watery, or very high in acidity, it is probably ground too coarse, or your brew time is much too fast. You want to grind finer and make sure that your brew is a bit longer, runs a bit slower, and extracts enough flavor. So acidity, under extraction, bitterness, over extraction. We want to find that balance where we have all three: acidity, bitterness, and that delicious sweetness that we all love. But also, and this is something I didn't mention because I take it as commonplace, but it's very important. You can follow all these steps but use bad quality coffee that's not freshly roasted, so it'll be very hard for you, if at all, to achieve a delicious cup of coffee. So use freshly roasted coffee, support your local roastery, and enjoy the relationship with your roaster. So today I know that I'm using a delicious coffee, well roasted, with a roaster whom I've got a great relationship with. Last thing to do, give it a swirl and pour. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope you have some tools to use back at home or in your cafe with your staff to make sure that you hit delicious, consistent brews that you can enjoy with people and with your customers.